7-day forecast.
Light rain on Friday and Sunday, with temperatures peaking at 74 degrees Fahrenheit on Thursday.
Hey guys, my name is Aaron. In this video, we're going to be working on our smart mirror project again. If you didn't see the video we created about 2 weeks ago, there's a video linked right here that'll show you how to build it. We're going to be adding some AI components to our smart mirror, so it'll have the ability to speak to you and listen to what you say. It will also have some facial recognition components, so it knows when you're standing in front of the mirror. And then the AI will be able to find weather, holidays, news, and tell jokes. So this video, we're going to show you how to load it on a Mac instead of a Raspberry Pi, because using a Raspberry Pi, there's a little bit too much setup for one video. If somebody wants to create a guide on how to load it on a Raspberry Pi, I'd be more than happy to merge it into the GitHub repository. In the first part, I'm going to show you how the AI works and what all the different components of the AI are. In the second part, I'm going to show you how to load it on the Mac and display it on the mirror. So let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to give a brief explanation of how our AI system works. If you think about a scenario where there are two people having a conversation, so say we have one person here named John. Say we have one other person down here named Joe. John says to Joe, "Hey Joe, how's the weather?" In order for John to answer this question, he has to think about a bunch of different things. So since this is probably audio, he has to listen to the audio. Once he's heard the audio, he has to find out, what does he mean? So there's a greeting, and he's asking about the weather. And then once he has this information, he has to observe the weather, and maybe he wants to greet John back, so he has to have some knowledge about John. Who is John? And then once he actually wants to respond, he has to think of what is he going to say. So maybe he says, "Hey John, weather is great." And then he actually has to say what he just thought. And then John would hear this, and this loop would happen all over again with whatever John wants to say. So our AI is similar to that scenario I just told you about. And let's just say that this is our smart mirror. When the smart mirror sees a user, we have a webcam up top, so there will be some sort of facial recognition. And once we know that the user's in front of the smart mirror, we'll start listening for audio. So let's take that example where somebody says, "What's the weather?" This is just audio, and it's not very useful to us because you can't really process audio as fast as you can process text. So we're going to use a module to convert that audio to text. So we'll just call this speech. And this is using Google Speech. And Google's really good about translating audio to text. So it's very accurate, and usually for most accents, it's able to correctly translate that audio to text. Once we have text, we want to figure out, what does the user actually mean by this sentence? And in order to do that, we're going to incorporate a module called NLU. We're using Wit.ai for this. And we'll have to do some setup to get this working once we start the tutorial. But I will talk about that in a bit. This extracts the intent from our text. So in this case, the intent is weather. So the user wants to know about the weather. You could also extract other entities. So maybe they ask, what's the weather today? Today would be an entity because it modifies what you return for the weather. So we have this, and we need to reach out to the internet and find information about what the user wants. So we'll call that module knowledge. Once we have knowledge, so say the weather is 50 or 75 degrees and sunny, we want to convert that to a sentence that actually flows and makes sense. It's like somebody else is saying it to them. So we have another module called NLG, and we're using something called simple NLG for this. And this will basically create a sentence. So maybe we say it's 75 degrees and sunny, exclamation mark. Once we have this text, we actually need to say it to the user. So we have one final module here, and this is text-to-speech. And so we're also using Google text-to-speech here, and it basically creates audio that we can play back to the user. I have a couple of things here that I'm going to use for the project. One on the left is a small portable speaker that just plugs in via the headphone jack. The other is a USB webcam. While you don't need both of these, it makes it nice because the webcam can sit on top of the mirror and the speaker can sit behind the mirror. If you didn't have these, you'd have to use your built-in webcam and built-in speakers. And in order for the facial recognition to work, you'd actually have to look at your Mac. This is nice because you can shut your Mac and then stow it away somewhere so that it's hidden. All right, I'm on my Mac right now. I have my terminal open. We're going to need to set up a few things in order to get our AI, our smart mirror to work. And so we're going to be using this GitHub project. It's called Magic Mirror, and I was unaware that this exists when I did my last tutorial. So I built my own Python smart mirror code, but this is actually a JavaScript library that you can use to make a smart mirror, and they have a bunch of pre-built modules in here. So I believe they have weather and news, clock, news feed, alerts, compliments, things like that. But the cool thing about this is you can actually create your own modules and then use this JavaScript display system to run your application. So what I did was I created a client on the front end that our AI will communicate with, send data to this front end, and then the front end will display information that we generated with our AI. So this AI system is something I wrote, and then front end is driven by Magic Mirror, but it uses a module that I created as well. First thing I'm going to do is go back to Magic Mirror and then clone this repository. This needs to be running before we can start up our AI client because it is dependent on this front end running because it sends HTTP calls to this front end. So you can clone this repository or download it, download a zip here. If you want to clone it, you have to have Git installed. So if I type git clone, the name of this repository, it'll clone into a folder on my computer. The next thing I'm going to want to do is make sure I have Node.js installed. And Node.js is basically a JavaScript server, which this Magic Mirror uses to run. I talk more about Node.js in my Raspberry Pi chatbot tutorial. So if you want to learn more about that, you can check that video out. I usually download the stable version instead of the current version. Stable version just has less bugs and there's less potential for failure here. So if you just click on this, download it, it will add Node.js to your path, and then you can run it in the command line. So if I go into the Magic Mirror directory that I just cloned, I can type npm install, and actually sudo rights are usually needed for this, and it will install the dependencies that Magic Mirror needs. Okay, now it's finished installing. It might throw some errors, but it should still run regardless of these errors. If I type npm start, it will start this program called Electron, which is basically a web browser inside of an application. And then it tells us that we need to create a config file, which we will do in a second. All right, the next thing you're going to want to do is clone another repository. And this repository is something that we created. It's on our GitHub organization. It's called AI Smart Mirror. I will link this in the description of the video, but this is basically all of our AI code as well as a few other things that you need in order to get this to run. So inside of this repository, there's a Magic Mirror folder, and in the Magic Mirror folder, you'll find both of the Magic Mirror modules as well as a config file. If you miss any steps in this video, I'm also going to add some information to this README, and you can follow along with that if you prefer that instead. So I'm going to download this repository on my Mac, and I've actually already done that. So if I go into AI Smart Mirror and I go into Magic Mirror, I can copy both of these folders over to my Magic Mirror project. Inside Magic Mirror, there's a modules folder, and you'll just have to copy those files and paste them in this folder. So I can actually just do that in Finder. So I have, this is in my AI Smart Mirror repository. I can go into Magic Mirror, copy these two files, and then if I go into Magic Mirror and paste those files in modules, that will work. And then if I go back to my AI Smart Mirror and I copy this config file, go to Magic Mirror, and in the config folder paste this file. If I go back to terminal and return to my Magic Mirror folder and type npm start, it starts the Magic Mirror application. And I can test that this works by going to a web browser and typing localhost 8080 /statement $, text equals, and then any text that you want to display. And if I go over to my Smart Mirror, it seems that everything's working and it displays that text. And you can clear that statement if you want by doing /clear. And now it's gone. You can also stop the Magic Mirror application by pressing Control-C. Okay, so I'm back in my AI Smart Mirror folder, and I need to install a few dependencies in order for this to work. So I'm going to use Homebrew to do that. Homebrew is sort of like apt-get for Linux or Raspbian. You use it to install dependencies, and you can also use it to uninstall things. If you don't have Homebrew installed, you'll first need to make sure that you have Ruby installed on your system, and then you can run this command to install Homebrew. And I will link both an installation guide for Homebrew and Ruby and the README for the AI Smart Mirror repository. So you can check that Brew is installed with brew -- version. And now that I have brew installed, I'm going to run brew install ffmpeg. And ffmpeg is used by our speech recognition module to transcode and play audio. And there we go. And since ffmpeg was already installed, it just says there was an error. But this should work for you if you don't have ffmpeg installed. The next thing I'm going to do is set up a virtual environment for Python. Since our AI code is written in Python, we want an easy way to install dependencies and not affect anything else on your system. So I have this script in the AI Smart Mirror directory called setup.sh, and this just creates a virtual environment called Hacker House Smart Mirror or HH Smart Mirror, and then it makes that virtual environment active and then installs all of the dependencies in that virtual environment. So I'm going to run sudo /setup.sh, and this will automatically install all the dependencies for me. Now that everything is installed, I need to run source hh smart mirror /bin/activate, and running this command will activate our virtual environment within the context of this terminal session. So every time you open up a new terminal window and want to start this program, you'll have to activate your virtual environment. And then you know it's active when you have this parentheses HH Smart Mirror in front of your terminal session. Okay, so now I need to do a couple more things to get this working. Inside of the models folder, so in the repository there's a models folder. Inside of the models folder there are two models. Facial recognition model is used for detecting faces. So when we have our webcam hooked up, this is basically just a bunch of data points that help the computer vision code determine if there's a face in the image. We'll use that for our facial recognition module. There's also a wit training data.zip, and Wit.ai is what we're using for natural language understanding. And I've used this in the past for our Raspberry Pi chatbot video, but we're going to use it again for our smart mirror because it's very useful and easy to work with. So what I'm going to want to do is use this training data to set up a new app. So I already have a few apps set up here, but you'll need to create an account with Wit.ai and then set up your own app so that you can get an API key and then use that with your application. So when I come to Wit and after I've made an account, I'll see this plus button up here for a new app. I'm just going to call this Smart Mirror tutorial. And just give it a description. And now I need to import app from backup. So this is where I'm going to select that training data, which is in this models folder. So if I browse for that, and here it is in my models folder, I can just open that. And then when I create a new app, it will automatically load all that data for me. Okay, so now it's created the app. I can go to the Understanding tab, and Understanding, you can see all of the intents and entities that I've trained. So clicking on intent, you can see that there's appreciation, maps, insult, personal status, weather, etc. And these are the things that your bot can understand. So in the future, if you want to add more intents, you would first have to train your bot on this console and then go into the code and add a few more cases for those separate intents. But I'm not going to talk too much about that. What we need to do now is go into settings, and in settings it will give you a server access token. So this is used to get data from Wit in our application. So if I just press reset token and then just say OK to this, it'll generate a new token. So here's my token. I can copy this, go back to my terminal, and if I open up the bot.py file, there will be a couple lines in here that you can change if you want. So I've put my name in here. If you want to put your own name, the bot will address you by name. There's a launch phrase. So in this case, my launch phrase is OK mirror. You can change that to whatever you want. So if you want it to be mirror mirror on the wall or something like that, you can change it to that, or even just OK Google or something like that. It will respond to you after you say that launch phrase. Down here we have our Wit.ai token. So I'm just going to edit this and make sure my value is within the quotes and paste it here. And you can also notice that there's this weather API token. So if you followed the previous video, you know that we got the API token from forecast.io. Forecast.io has now changed to darksky.net. So if you go to darksky.net, you can create another account and get an API token from these guys. So if I scroll down to the bottom, click Dark Sky API, sign up, it will give you a API token that you can replace in here. Okay, I've edited both those tokens in my bot.py file. So now I can test this out. If I press Command T, it opens up another tab in the terminal. And I need to make sure that I start my magic mirror before I start the AI portion. So I'm going to go into magic mirror directory and type npm start. Okay, so now that has started, I'm going to go back to my AI Smart Mirror folder and type python bot.py. So the vision component of this isn't hooked up yet, so it just bypasses the vision component. And if you remember from what I said earlier, the vision component is basically a webcam that recognizes faces. Once it's recognized a face, it will continue on to the speech recognition portion. So with the vision component bypassed, it will just constantly listen for the launch phrase. And then once you've said the launch phrase, then you can ask for more commands from the bot. So let's start this. And you want to make sure that your virtual env is still active before you start this. Okay, so now it says I'm listening, and then when it finds audio, it says found audio. And you can see here in the console output, it says Google speech recognition thinks you said, and then there's a line of text that I just said. And this won't do anything to your API or your AI client with Magic Mirror until it actually finds that launch phrase. And you can also see at the bottom there's a text label down here that says listening. So for debugging purposes, since this is a little slow, depending on how fast your network connection is, you can use this listening tag to debug and find out, when it's actually listening to you. Okay, Mirror.
Hey Aaron, what can I do for you?
Find me a satellite map of San Francisco.
Sure, here's a map of San Francisco.
Thanks.
Of course.
Okay, and so now it seems to be working. I can press Control C on the terminal tab that's running the AI, and then I can go over to my tab that's running Magic Mirror, and press Control C as well, and it stops both of those. And again, you want to make sure that you start your Magic Mirror before you start your AI. If you want to deactivate your virtual environment, all you have to do is type deactivate, and this little parentheses HH Smart Mirror will go away, so you know you're not in your virtual environment anymore. Next thing I'm going to do is install OpenCV. OpenCV is used for our vision component, and it stands for open source computer vision. OpenCV comes bundled with this facial recognition model, and all we have to do is write a simple script that utilizes that model, and we can detect faces in a video source. So in order to install this on our Mac, it's pretty easy if we use Homebrew. I have this guide on how to do that. I will link it in the README, but basically you just need to run a few commands and then create links to the cv.py and cv2.so files. First thing it wants to run is brewtap homebrew/science. So we'll come back to the terminal and run that. And then brew install OpenCV. And since my OpenCV is already installed, it says it's already installed, but if you don't have it, it'll go through the process of installing it for you. All right, the next thing we want to do is create a link between this file that was installed by Brew and use that link in our virtual environment. So in this guide, they have 2.4.9 as the version that was installed, but that version probably changed because this guide was written a while ago. So we have to check the correct version. So let's go to this folder, and let me just open up another window so that we don't have to go back to the directory we're in right now. So if I do cd and then paste the first part of that path, /user/local seller OpenCV, it'll take us to this version folder. So this one is 2.4.13_3. I'm going to copy that, go back to my AI Smart Mirror folder, and then go inside of the Hacker House Smart Mirror virtual environment. In this folder, there will be a lib folder. You want to go into that folder, and then go into Python 2.7, and then go into site-packages. And inside of here is where we'll want to create that link. So I am just going to copy this first link for the cv.py file, paste it, and then I need to change that folder. So instead of 2.4.9, I'm going to go back to my other window, copy this folder name, and paste it. So it'll be 2.4.13_3. And then make sure you have sudo rights when you run this. Next thing I'm going to do is copy the second line for the cv2.so file, paste it, and then change the folder again. And again, make sure I have sudo rights when I run this. Okay, so now if I type ls, I can see that there are two files here that were linked over, cv.py and cv2.so. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to the top level directory in my AI Smart Mirror folder, and I'm going to again activate my virtual environment. Now in order to test the facial recognition component, I wrote a script in the vision.py file. So you can run python vision.py, and there I am. And as you can see, it recognizes my face. And it's kind of slow. but for the most part it works as it's good enough for our needs. Okay, so now if I again make sure that my Magic Mirror client is started, and I run Python bot.py. So when I'm not in front of the camera, it waits for a face to be found, and then once it finds a face, it starts listening to audio. So if I turn the camera towards myself, it'll say found face, and now it's listening to what I'm saying. All right, now I have my mirror plugged into my Mac. I also have my USB webcam plugged in and my speaker plugged in. In order to change the output or the input for the microphone, I'm just going to press on this icon and then go to System Preferences. If I click on Sound and then go to Input, I can change my USB audio device to the second one instead of the internal microphone. And then in order to rotate the display, I need to go back to System Preferences, click on Displays, Arrangement. When I click on the second display, on the second display, you should have a window which gives you the option to rotate the screen. I just rotated it 90 degrees and exit out of that. The next thing I have to do is make sure I'm using the correct input source for my video. And if I type vim bot.py, I can open up my bot.py file. There's a camera option right here, and I'm just going to change that to 1 so it's using the second input. Press escape and then capital ZZ to save. And now if I go to Magic Mirror, start Magic Mirror, and then start my AI, I can scroll back over to Magic Mirror, close my Mac. Now my AI is running on my Magic Mirror. Okay, so in order to show off our mirror a little bit, I'm going to go through all of the different phrases that you can say to the mirror. So after you get through that launch phrase, the function is recursive, so you can keep asking it questions and it'll keep responding to it. And then when you say either thank you or it doesn't recognize your intent, it will stop responding to you and you'll have to say the launch phrase again. So let me just give a demo of a bunch of different phrases. Not all of them will be in the video. There'll be a few Easter eggs, but you can find those if you want to. Okay, mirror.
What can I do for you?
Find me a map of San Francisco.
Sure. Here's a map of San Francisco.
Find me a hybrid map of San Francisco.
Sure. Here's a map of San Francisco.
What's the current weather?
The temperature is 56 degrees this evening. It is clear.
What's the 7-day forecast?
Light rain on Friday and Sunday, with temperatures peaking at 74 degrees Fahrenheit on Thursday.
Tell me a joke.
An Englishman, an Irishman, and a Scotsman walk into a bar. The bartender turns to them, takes one look, and says, "What is this? Some kind of joke?" Quote,
How does my hair look?
"Your hair looks great."
How do I look?
"You look beautiful."
Find me some current news.
"I found a few headlines for you."
What's a upcoming holiday?
looks like the next holiday is Veterans Day.
Thank you.
Of course.
Okay, so that's all for this video. If anybody wants to add more intents to the AI or add more functionality, I'd be more than happy to add that into the GitHub repository. Like I said in the video, I'm going to be linking all the steps in the README file for the repository. So if you missed a step in the video, you can always cross-reference that README. If you like this project, make sure to check out some of our other projects like our Facebook chatbot, as well as our robotic bartender that we're making. But until then, see you next time.